All right. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday, possibly Tuesday for those of you that live in the future on the other side of the world. I hope you're having a wonderful day here. Looks like you can't see out my window, but I was going to say it's snowing for me outside my window. I'm in the cold Midwest right now, so I hope everyone's doing well, staying warm. If you're in winter, if you're in summer, I hope you're staying cool. Today we're going to be talking about SQLAlchemy. So we're just gonna kind of go through what SQLAlchemy is, and I'm gonna kind of walk through some code showing some basics. And I'm just gonna do that in my text editor. So you're more than welcome to follow along, or you can just watch, and then the video will be up later. And then if you wanted to, watch and then follow along on a second go through, totally up to you. But just in case you did want to follow along, I want to give you some time to open up your text editor so that you can do that. But anyways, hi! I haven't seen y'all in a while. I think my last live stream was in December, so it's been a little bit. Happy 2021. So SQLAlchemy is an ORM, and that stands for, it's right here at the top, an object relational mapper. And so essentially what that is you have a SQL database and you have your Python program. And it kind of bridges the gap between the two so that you can interact with your database using Python. So it turns everything in your database into Python objects so that you can work with it using Python so that hopefully it's a little bit easier because you already know how to work with Python. You get to use a lot of the, your regular syntax with like slices and things like that. So should hopefully make things pretty good. And just as a heads up, in chat with y'all right now is the fabulous Karen. So she's going to be sending any questions that y'all put in chat my way. So I can't see chat myself, so she'll be sending the questions to me, and she's hanging out there with y'all to answer any questions and send any questions my way. So feel free to say hi to Karen if you're in chat. So yeah, let's get started. So I'm just on the SQLAlchemy docs. It's just docs.sqlalchemy.org on the 1.3, which is the current release. That's the one that's currently out. And I'm just going to, right here where it says, read this first. That's where we're going on the SQLAlchemy ORM. So it kind of has its own tutorial built in here, and that's what we're going to kind of walk through. So we're going to look at the documentation, and we're going to use it and write code at the same time. So first thing is obviously we need to install SQLAlchemy, otherwise we can't use it. So I'm going to pull up my file here. I have a folder inside of Visual Studio Code. I've already created a virtual environment. I just wanted to point that out here. My virtual environment is called ENV, which to do that on Windows is very similar to a Mac. I believe that's correct. Python-m VNV ENV will create this folder, and you can see mine's activated because I have this at the start of my command prompt. So I'm inside of my virtual environment. So to install SQLAlchemy, pip install SQLAlchemy. Hit enter, and it's hopefully doesn't take very long. Oh, there it goes. Okay, cool. And then we can do pip freeze just so you can see, like, prove that it's installed. Requirements.txt. So this is going to create a requirements file, which for anybody else, like if I were to create a repo for this, I would just need to give them this file, and then they could install all the stuff that's in here. So you can see we have SQLAlchemy, and it shows us which version. And a couple other things are installed because VS Code, when I'm on my Windows computer, is always like, you must install Pylint. And it gets very like angry if I don't. So I appease it. I install it, and I'm like, okay, you win, Visual Studio Code. But it does help find mistakes, but that's why that's in there and some other things. So we have SQLAlchemy in the console to check the version, and you can see this in the docs too. I'm going to switch back over. You can see you run SQLAlchemy.dunder version. So I'm going to do that in the command line. So I'm going to go Python. And I'm now inside the Python shell. Pull this up a little bit. And you can see which version I have of Python right now. Import SQLAlchemy. Alchemy. Sorry, my brain is like not wanting to type stuff today. And then it was SQLAlchemy.dunder version. And then you can see we have it installed, and we have this version installed right now. I always forget. Is it exit this way? That's correct. Okay, and I'm going to hit clear. Okay, so we know we have SQLAlchemy installed, so let's get to doing stuff with it. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and here we have connecting. So we're going to need from SQLAlchemy import create engine. I'm going to do that at the top of our models.py file. The model is the structure or the way that your database is going to look. Essentially, you're going to tell the database, this is the name of the table, these are the names of the columns, and this is the type of data inside of each column. So let's say there's 4 columns in a table. Column 1 is like name, and it's a string. Column 2 is trying to think of a number. Credit card number, and it's an integer, and so on and so forth. So you're telling it specifically what this database is going to look like. So that's what models.py file usually does, and it's kind of a convention to call it models.py. So if you're creating a file that's going to hold the structure of your database, it's probably a good idea to call it models.py, because then other developers will see it and go, that's the structure, the model for what the database looks like. And it just helps people get stuff a lot quicker if we use the same terms. So we had from SQLAlchemy, and I already forgot what I was supposed to do. Create engine. There we go. Import create engine. Give us a couple spaces, and I'm going to go ahead and save just so I don't forget. And then let's see, we have this engine, create engine. Got all this information here. So I'm actually going to copy it just to save some time. Excuse me from typing it all in. Paste. So we have this thing here called engine, and it's going to be where we call create engine. It's going to create a SQLite database, and this is going to create it in memory, but I'm going to switch that right now. And we're going to create one, and it's going to pop up over here on the left as an actual file. So I'm going to call it, let's do pets.db, just because pets are a little bit more fun. And then this echo equals true here. SQLite kind of has this fun feature where if you turn echo on, in the console, it kind of repeats, kind of a way to say it, it kind of repeats what you did in Python, and it shows you the SQL equivalent to kind of show you both in the console. So that's kind of what it means by echo, where you do something in Python, it's going to show you, yes, you did that thing, and here's also what that same code looks like in SQL. So it can be helpful if you know SQL to see how it's doing the same things or how it's translating it into SQL. If you don't know SQL, it might make you more confused, and you can absolutely set this to false. I'm going to leave it to true right now, just so y'all can see in the console what it looks like. So this is going to set our create engine. Let's pop back over into the docs. Let's keep running. And then we're going to get into declaring a map. So this is going to be creating our model, and that's going to connect our database to our model so that they know, 1, where to go, where you're going to create this database, and 2, what the database should look like. So this is going to create a SQLite database called pets.db, and it'll put it inside of our same folder, our same directory that we're in right now. So we're just going to kind of continue creating our connections and our structure for our database. So we need from SQLAlchemy.ext.declarative, and this is declarative base. I'm going to do enter. SQLAlchemy.ext.declarative import declarative base. All right, and then let's go back over to our docs. Make sure I hit save. And we have a variable called base, and it's going to be where we're calling declarative base. So I'm going to copy that. Just going to paste it underneath our engine. And the reason that base is capitalized because this is relating to a class. So to help keep that in your brain, classes are usually capitalized, so base equals class, which is why it's a capital letter. And then if I keep scrolling, you can see this is their example on the documentation of the model for the database. So we're going to create something similar, but we're going to use pets instead of users. So you actually have to import column. You can see they're creating a column. And then they specify what type of data is going to go into that column. So this ID column holds integers, name column holds string, full name, nickname, all of those are strings. So we're going to do that next. So we're going to need, I'll go ahead and get all three because I'm making this up as we go. So I don't particularly know if we need. This is from SQLAlchemy, so it's just straight SQLAlchemy, so it can be added up here to the top. We need column, and this is a capital M or capital C. String, also a capital S, and not index, integer, all capital letters. And because this is getting a little long, I'm going to put these inside of parentheses here. And I'm going to enter these on to a new line. And I kind of like when they're like that. There we go. Save. Okay, so now we can get to creating our database model. So this is to set up where our database is going to be located. Now we're going to use this base to help show this is where our, or this is what our database, like our table actually looks like. So we have class, and then remember classes begin with capital letters, so class pet, and we're going to pass in base. And then inside of here, we need to give our table a name. So this could be Dunder table name. And you just set it straight equals to the name. And I'm just going to call it pets. So the file name that's going to pop up inside of our directory is going to be called pets.db. It's going to be a database. And then the table inside of that is going to be called pets. So trying to make it super clear because I know I'm also going a little bit fast so we can kind of see how things work. Okay, so now we are going to, let me pop over here so we can see it. We're going to create our columns. So you can have as many columns as you like. What's typical with a database is once I create these and I actually create our database, if I change my model, it doesn't always change the database. Usually you either have to push changes in some way or you have to delete your database and recreate it so that, let's say you added another column or subtracted a column so that that change is pushed. But that's going a little advanced. We're just going to stick with a set number of columns. So the very first column we're going to do is going to be called ID, and this is going to be the primary key. Typically with a database, you want each piece of information to have its own unique ID. This is to make sure that you have, it's easy to find items, you don't accidentally overwrite things. It also helps you make sure to find the correct item so that you can update it and different things like that. But it's pretty common to have an ID column that is like everyone gets their own special ID number. So it's going to be a column and it's going to be a data type of integer. And then to specify that this is our special ID column that everyone should get their unique key, we're going to call this primary underscore key, oops, equals, not minus, equals true. So it is our primary key. So what this means is when we start adding pets to our database, the first pet that we add to our database will get an ID of 1, and then the next one will be 2 and 3 and so on and so forth. So it'll always get the next ID available. Sorry, my throat's starting to go. Okay, so next let's do the name of the pet, and let's do column, and that's going to be a string. Let's do, so we do another number, let's do age. Oops. Column, and that's going to be an integer. And let's do like type. Like what type of pet is it? Oop, it's not gonna like type, so let's do pet type equals column, and that'll be a string. And then we can put in like dog, cat, rabbit, like that'll be our pet type. So we'll just leave it with these 3. So we'll have name, age, and pet. An ID, because it is our primary key, will automatically be created for us. So you never have to pass in an ID. It'll just auto do it for you, which is super nice. So it's here and it is in your database, but as we move forward, you'll see that I don't have to specify an ID when I create pets for our database. So that is our database model. It comes in the form of a class. It's saying that our table is going to be called pets. It's going to have 4 columns called ID, name, age, and pet. And they're going to be an integer, string, integer, and string for the data types. I'm also going to include a dunder wrapper. And it does take self because it's inside of a class. And we're going to return an f string. And this is just for the console, so we can kind of see what pets look like without seeing it in kind of a funky way. This will kind of give us a little bit nicer way to see things. So let's do self.name, self.age, and self.petType. So it's just going to print that out as a string, our 3 columns. And let's actually do, I'll actually do the ID as well up here at the beginning. Oops. There we go. That way it just is like 1 pipe, name, age, pet type. So that's, and be good on that. Okay, cool. So we have our model. We have our location of where the database is going to be. Let's head back to our documentation. So we did all of this. Let's keep going. Have our schema. We're going to keep going. All right, and then we're going to get into session. There's something else that we're also missing. Trying to see in the documentation where it shows it so I can show y'all. Oh, here it is. Okay. So this right here is going to create your database. So I'm going to copy this. Actually, I'll type it out just so that it's going a little bit lower. But I'm going to do it down here at the bottom inside of a dunder main. So if name equals dunder main. And this way, it'll only be created if I run this models.py file. If I were to import this models.py file into, say, like an app.py for my program, it won't automatically create the database. So I still have control over when that gets created because I probably want to have that under my control. So it's going to be base.metadata.create_all, and we're going to pass in engine. So base plus engine, you can essentially think about it as base, which has access to our database model, which is telling it how many columns and the type of data inside the columns and the name of the table. base has all of that information, and it's connecting it with the location of where we decided we wanted this database to go. So it's connecting those two things together and popping out a beautiful brand spanking new database for you. So that should be everything. Now, hopefully, when we run it, Python models.py, it goes and does the good thing. Yes, there it is. So you can see I have an extension on that kind of gives these little symbols. So you can see it has this database symbol here showing that it's a database, pets.db. And if you click on, it's not going to show it to you because it's not, it's an unsupported kind of text thing. So you can't actually just like click into it and see it. But it is there. And you can see in the console, if I kind of slowly scroll up, if it will let me. Oh, I'm scrolling the wrong way. That's why. You can see everything that it ran in order to do what we wrote up here in our code. So it's kind of interesting. It shows you. And then this is kind of the SQL that it did. You can see it calls it varchar instead of a string because in Python we call it string. In databases with SQL, it's saying that's going to be some characters. And then age is an integer. And then it shows primary key is the ID field. So kind of shows everything that we did before. And it shows that to you in the console. So it's kind of nice. It breaks it down for you. So if that's helpful, you can leave that on. I'm actually going to go ahead and turn it off just so it doesn't clutter up my console. Just makes it a little bit easier for me to show y'all what's going on. So I just set that to false. So sweet, we've now created a database, and these are the ID name, these are the columns that are in it. And there's nothing in our database because we haven't put anything in our database. So let's look at what that is. I'm going to keep scrolling. And I'm just following through their documentation. So hopefully this helps kind of make their documentation a little bit easier to follow so that after the live stream, if you want to keep going on your own, absolutely can. And I also have a brand new course that launched today called SQLAlchemy Basics that goes through all of this and more with an example project at the end. So if you're enjoying this, feel free to go check that out. So what they did is they created an instance of the mapped class. So you can see just like, sorry, I'm about to cough again. Whew, okay. It's that dry winter air. You can see if you're familiar with classes, object-oriented classes, you just use the name of the class, that capital letter, and it's kind of like a function call. And then you pass in the specific information for each column that we have. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to do that down here inside of the console, inside of the Python shell. Sorry, my brain just shut down completely on me. I'm going to hit clear. I'm going to run Python. So that takes me into the shell. And you can tell that because I have these three carets together, I guess. Because I think my video is backward. It's one of these carets, one or the other. So I'm inside the Python shell. Now I have to import my file so I have access to the code that I've written so far. So I need to go import models. And I just do import models. You don't have to do import models.py. Now this does mean that when I go to write, because in the example you can see they just did user. Because I'm importing models, I'm going to have to do models.pet to actually access my pet class. Because right now I just have access to everything inside of this file, so I need to specify each specific piece. So I'll do my dog, Jethro. So we'll do models.pet to create our first pet. And we need name equals Jethro. And then we need an age, and this is an integer, so no strings. She is almost 2, so I'll just put her as 1. for right now. She turns 2 in April, so she's almost there. And then, sorry, it's right in front of my face. Pet type. Pet type equals, and this is a string, so this needs to be inside of quotation marks, and she is a dog. Okay. So you can see it doesn't look like anything that happened, but I can do Jethro.name, and there's my name. You access it with dot notation. It's very similar to how you work with objects in classes in Python OOP. Jethro.age, Jethro.petType. Sweet, so all that's there. And let's do Jethro.id because that should automatically be created for us, right? And we get nothing. Now, this is what's interesting about SQLAlchemy. I'll show you that right now. So you can see, let's turn it into a string, because that's what they show. Jethro.id. So you can see ID is actually none. It doesn't exist. And this is because we may have created an object that is our Jethro pet, but Jethro is not inside of our database yet. She's just kind of like floating around here in the ether. She's not in the database yet. So we actually need to tie Jethro to the database so that she gets inserted into our database. And that's going to be, I'm going to scroll through creating sessions. So SQLAlchemy has this thing called session, and it works very similarly, that's always a fun word to say live. It works very similarly to like a cart when you're shopping online. So when you shop online, you can add stuff to your cart, but that doesn't mean you purchased it, right? It's just like in your cart, and then you actually have to navigate to like the cart and like hit like checkout, and then you put in like your address and your credit card information, and then you get all the way to the end, and then you hit like place order, and then you've actually purchased items. So that's very similar to kind of how our session works. So when we're going to add it to our program, and we're going to add Jethro to session. It's kind of like adding Jethro to our cart. So she would still not be added to our database yet. She's just kind of like hanging out in our cart. And then we actually have to commit her to the database, which is like actually hitting that place order button on like an online shop. So let's do that. We need from SQLAlchemy.orm import session maker. Oops, wrong way. So from SQLAlchemy.orm import session maker. And now we're going to need to create two things. First one is going to be session with a capital S variable because it's relating to a class. And that's going to be session maker, which is a function. And we're going to pass in bind equals engine. Just make sure I did that correctly. So session, capital S equals session maker bind engine. So what that's doing, it's tying our session to our engine, which is what is holding the location of our database. And then right below that, we're going to create a lowercase session equals our session class, and we're going to call it. So that'll be an instance of our session class. And I know this gets confusing, and it's kind of like, why have all these steps? It's the way it is. It's the way they created it. And I'm sure there's plenty of really great reasons for it. So lowercase session is calling our session class, which is calling session maker, which is connected to our engine. So it kind of connects it all the way back to our actual database. So now we have session and we can use it. So I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to copy this. Hopefully it lets me paste it. Let's test it. Ah, it will. Okay. All right, so I'm actually, since we updated the file, I'm actually going to exit and re-enter the shell because I can't remember if it takes in those changes. I kind of doubt it does, so I'm just going to do this. So import models. Cool. So I'm going to just recreate Jethro. So I just copied and pasted Jethro. And then I could do the same thing. Jethro.name, Jethro.age, Jethro.pet_type, and Jethro.id. So still, everything's exactly the same. Now to use session, let me scroll down. We add a person to our session like this, session.add, and then it shows us head user. So session.add, and then you use the variable name that's holding your pet object. So this would be Jethro. And because I almost messed up, because same thing, we're importing the entire models file. In the docs, it's just going to be session.add. Because we're down here in the Python shell importing the file, we need to run models.session.add. Otherwise, it's going to be like, I can't find session. So you have to specify, go into the models file, then find session, and then do the adding. So this, you could actually create like a whole new pet and type in all the information, or you can pass in Jethro, which is the one we created. So yay! But that feels really unsatisfying, right? To hit enter and it just like does nothing. So you can actually check to see if something is inside of session. That is models for right now, models.session.new. And you can see we have something inside of our session right now. And this just shows us everything new inside of our session. So it shows us that we have Jethro, a 1-year-old dog, and there is no ID right now. So it's pulling from, sorry, I'm scrolling wrong way, our Dunder Repper here to get the way that this looks right here. So we know that she's now inside of our session, but she's still not inside of our database. So if I do jethro.id, still nothing. In order to actually push her into the database, you actually have to commit her. So it's kind of like Git, if you're used to working with Git. So you actually have to like commit her to the database. You're like, yes, hard yes, putting her in that database. Models.session.commit. And you don't have to pass anything in. When you call commit, it will commit everything that is currently inside of session. So right now, the only thing inside of our session is Jethro. So when I hit commit, it gives us that super satisfying where nothing is shown to you. So you might be like, did it go? So I can actually hit, no, is it not going to let me do it? Okay, that's fine. Models.session.new again, and you can see now it's empty. And to see if it's inside of our database, I'm actually going to pop into our actual database up here using SQLite. So I'm going to exit, and then I believe I think it's 3.exe. It's been a while since I've done it on Windows, so fingers crossed I do it correctly the first time. Pets.db. On Windows, you do have to install SQLite in order to do what I'm about to do. On a Mac, you do not have to. Yay! I remembered the command. It's one of those things. Sometimes you remember it, and sometimes it's been a while and you have to Google. You can see we're inside of a SQLite shell here that's connected to my pets.db file. So now I can do .tables, and this will show me all of the tables inside of this pets.db. And remember, we only have one, our pets table, and you can see it says pets. And then I'm going to run a SQL statement here. So select all, star means all, from pets. And then to finish a statement in SQL, you have to use the colon. If you forget, it'll do something like this, and then it'll be like, so is it running? And it's like, no, it's not running. You just forgot your colon. I do it all the time, especially working with Python. We don't have colons at the end of our code, lines of code, so I forget it all the time. But if I put the colon in, hit enter, you can see we now have 1 because Jethro is in our database. Jethro, age is 1, and she's a dog. So we've successfully added 1 pet to the database. Yay, pat yourself on the back. So we've done a ton so far. So pat yourself on the back. Every little thing that you've written, that is code that you've written, and you're doing awesome. Okay, let me check into our documentation again. Okay, so I'm trying to kind of follow what's in the documentation, not jump around, so that way if y'all go look at the documentation later on your own to try and keep going, hopefully it's, I'm going in order and not jumping around, makes it a little bit easier to do so. So let's look. We have the session.addAll. So let me exit. I think it's .exit. Yes, for SQLite. Okay. I'm just gonna hit clear, and then I'm gonna pop back into the Python shell and import models. Okay. Now there is a way to add multiple, for us, pets to our database at one time without having to do create pet session.add, create new pet session.add, and repeating that over and over again. What we can do instead is we can either we can create a list of pets, and we can pass that list into models because we're importing models, but session.add_all. And you can pass it inside of here, and it will add all of the things in your list to the to session. It won't auto add it to the database, same thing. It'll add it to session, and then you have to commit it to the database. So just to show what that looks like, I'm going to make a list called pets and pet name equals Joni. It's one of the treehouse family cats. Age, I have no idea. Let's do 4. Pet_type. Oops. Equals Joni's a cat. And then let's do another one. Pet and name equals, and let's do Harley. Harley is a sweetheart. The big old fluffy dog. Age, he's pretty old. I'm gonna say 10. He's a sweet old guy. And he is a dog. And then I'll do 3. Oops, capital P, pet, name equals, who else do we got? Now I'm blanking on pet names. We have pet channels at the office. So I'm going to pop in. I'll go to cat. So we have 2 dogs and 2 cats. Someone's name. Ace. Ace is our next one. Age equals, let's do, looks like a young one, so let's do 2. I'll do 2. And then pet_type equals cat. Close that, and then close our list. Oh, darn. Okay, so I made the error, and for some reason, up and down arrow are not working for my console, so I'm gonna have to copy this, paste it. So what I forgot to do is we have to do models.pet like we did before, and I absolutely forgot. So I'm just going to come back in here and add it. Models.pet. 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 Nope, I think I spelled that wrong. Models.pet. Okay. There we go. Now it works. So I can do pets, and you can see it is a list, and it has Joni, Harley, and Ace. And you can see for each one, their ID is none because they haven't been added to the database yet. They're just hanging out. They're just objects. Make sure I pop back down here so I can see questions. Okay. So now we can do models.session.add underscore all. And we can pass in our list of pets, which was called pets. And then I can do models.session.new. And you can see it was added to our session. We have our 3 cats. And then I can do models.session dot commit. And then to check, because I still have access to this pets variable, because I'm still in the same shell with it up there, I can do pets, and let's do our first one. Remember, lists are 0 index, so this would be Joni. And I can do .id, and I get 2 because Jethro was our first pet added to the database, so Jethro has an ID of 1. Joni has the ID of 2 because that was the second pet added to our database. And we can do for pet in pets, 4 spaces, and then we can do pet.id. Print pet.id. And then you can see we get 2, 3, and 4. So we've added now 4 animals to our database. Checking our time. Okay. So we've learned so far, just going to do a quick recap. We've learned how to create a model in a file called models.py that creates our database and allows us to interact with it, especially using session to add and commit things to the database. Our table is called pets. Our class that is holding all of our model information is called pet, singular. We have 4 columns, but we only have to input information for 3 because ID is automatically created for us. And we can add animals to the database. I'm going to scroll up a bunch by doing models.session.add, and then here we passed in Jethro, which was a variable holding a pet object. And then you have to hit commit to actually add that pet to the database. And then if you have a list of pets like we did here, you can add them all at one time to session using session.addAll and passing in your list, and then you can commit them. So they're all there. And models.session.new will show any new objects inside of your session. Awesome. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to show you, and then I'll probably stop here, is to do with updating things. So obviously, as maybe you get more pets or pets like their age change, it's their birthday, you'll need to update information. Just like any database, the basic operations are CRUD, which is, I don't know why I said that weird, CRUD, which is create, read, update, and delete. So we've done create, we've created pets and added them to the database. Reading items in the database, we kind of have with doing stuff like pet.id to see the different information, and same thing with like pet.name and things we've done before. But that usually also includes like querying in order to like find the piece of information in the database that you want to then present to, say, the user. So querying kind of takes a little bit extra. That's probably would be like a session in its own. So we're going to work on updating. And for updating with SQLAlchemy, if you have access to the item, updating information is real easy peasy. So we have access to this pets list still. So let's do let's do ACE. So we know ACE is the third item in our list, or the index of 2. So I can do pet 2. Sorry, I need another drink of water. And let's do dot age. So this is going to, if I were to just hit enter, oh, sorry, pets 2 dot age. Might help if I do it correctly. There we go. It's just going to show me their age. So it's going to grab that piece of that information. But we can also use it to just say, we want their age to be equal to 4. That's all you do. You just grab it and set it equal to something else. And I did the same thing wrong again. Pets 2 dot age equals 4. And then I can do pets 2 dot age, and it's now 4 because I've changed it. And then you can go session models dot session, and now instead of new, because our pets list has already been added to the database, it's no longer a new object inside of session. It's actually in something called dirty. And that's where all of your updates will be held. It'll be under session.dirty instead of session.new because it's not a new object. So you can see right here, it's showing that ACE is, oh, sorry, that's the ID number. Showing here that ACE is now 4 instead of 2. So we made that change. But if we were to look in the database, that change is not pushed through to the database yet. You actually have to commit it so that it's like all the way there tied together. So models.session.commit, and then we can do, then I'm going to exit, all new, exit this way. And I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to do SQLite3.exe pets.db tables, and then I can do select all from pets. You can see pushed all the way to the database, it is now 4, so it's pushed all the way through. So when it comes to updating items, as long as you have access to that object, you just set, object.age equal to new number, object.name equal to new string of what the name is, etc. So it's actually pretty easy. It's kind of fun. So I'm going to pop back into the Python shell. Import models. Okay. So we now have 4 items in the database, and we know how to add items to the database. We know how to create objects so that they can be added to the database. You know how to check if things are in session, how to commit things to the database. You know how to update something and then check if it's been followed by session. And the fun thing about session when it comes to adding things, if you noticed earlier, sorry, my throat's really starting to go. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back up. So you can see I did pets.age equal 4, and then I did pets.age to show that it has changed to 4, and then I ran session.dirty. It was already in session, so I kind of glossed over that, but I want to come back to it. You don't need to add it again to session. It's already being followed by session, and so it already has seen that you've made this change, and it's already put it inside of session for you. So session is always watching you over the back, just like sitting here staring at you as you work. I know, it kind of sounds creepy when you think about it that way. But it's always watching. It knows when you've been sleeping. No, I'm just kidding. It kind of makes me think of that Christmas song, right? But it's watching, it knows when you change things so that it automatically keeps it in session, and then when you hit commit, it will commit things to the database. But this is important to know because if you go around changing a whole bunch of stuff and then you commit, but you only wanted to commit like the last thing you did and not the last 10 things you did, then you might accidentally commit things like changes or new items to the database that you didn't actually want to happen. So it is important to know that Session is going to keep track of your work. So it's going to know when you've updated things, and it's going to automatically put that inside of Session for you. So then if you do like 10 things and then you decide to commit, you might accidentally commit things that you didn't mean to do. There is a way to kind of undo button when things are inside, sorry, scrolling wrong direction, and that is called models.session.rollback. So this is what you want to run, and when you have things like a bunch of stuff in Session and you're like, oops, I don't want all this stuff in Session. I actually want to kind of kick all this stuff out of Session, kind of undo it, so that I can start from scratch, start from 0 again. So you run session.rollback to do that. So that's why it's always good to kind of get into a cadence of like update thing, commit thing, add thing, commit the thing, so that you don't actually end up with like a long history of like adds and deletes and updates and all sorts of stuff, and then you commit, and then it's like, oops, there was something in there I didn't want to happen anymore, but now it happened. So hopefully that all makes sense. I don't really want to go too much farther because especially when we get into querying, like I said before, that could be a session in and of itself. You can get super deep into querying because you can get real specific. Like I want to find something that has this inside of a string inside of the database, and you can, order things by ascending and descending and filter and all sorts of stuff. So hopefully this was fun. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. I did want to get through some good stuff, so we got into some code. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Like I said, I have a brand spanking new course out today, just published today, on SQLAlchemy basics. So I go through a lot of the stuff that I did here today, plus more. I get into delete and more examples with rollback, and I get into querying, and we do a whole project together where we have a list of books in a CSV file, and we add them to our database, and then we go through and interact with them by being able to add more books, edit books, delete books, look at some like book analysis information, like how many books in the database have Python in the name, how many books are in the database, stuff like that. So I think it's a lot of fun. It goes through SQLAlchemy, which is a ton of fun, and it's a pretty popular Python library for working with databases. So it's a good one to know, having your Python tool belt. So I hope you go check it out. It's live on the Treehouse website right now, so you can go get started right away. But that is it for me today, y'all. I'm going to get back to work. Got a lot of stuff to get done. Some other things coming soon. And I look forward to seeing y'all again. In fact, I think I'll be back here next Monday. Same time, same place, 2 p.m. Central, noon Pacific. And we'll be talking about Flask using SQLAlchemy. So if you really liked today's, then on next week, you'll be able to learn how to use it with Flask. So have a great day, y'all. See you around.